And we are live. Welcome back to the Digital Creators Podcast. Today we're in the studio with Yande. Hey Yande, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. So Yande is the owner and director of Perth-based brand Rep Kulture, a fashion label with the mission of bringing people together to embrace their cultural roots. Yande launched the brand in 2018 where she sold her garments online and in local markets. The brand grew, and in 2020 the first Rep Culture brick and mortar store was opened in the city. And in this episode, we're going to learn about Yande's story, her background, and how she created her brand and her goals for the future. So you're, I think, one of the first people on here, I believe, that has their own like actual brick and mortar store, which is quite exciting. I think it might be because a lot of the designers I interview are also like young people, so maybe they haven't gotten there yet, but you have your own store. And that was, you opened that in 2020, which is, I guess, a challenging time to open your store, but it's still going. How's it been running like your own actual store as opposed to online?
I think it's been interesting. Like, I found that like when we actually opened the store, we launched just after lockdown, and we were surprised with the response. Like, so many people came out to support us. We didn't expect it at all. So it was a huge jump for us. Like, we started from, just selling from home, selling online, which I think is a lot easier to manage than actually doing brick and mortar, because you have to know how to do like stock control, like, all the inventory stuff. And for me, coming from a marketing background, I didn't know anything. So it's been a huge challenge, but taking it one step at a time, I'm learning a lot, which has been really good.
So you come from more of a marketing background than, say, like a fashion background?
Yes, that's correct. So I actually studied marketing. So I did marketing and hospitality at Curtin University. So fashion was really not in my view. I wasn't really thinking of doing fashion. I was actually thinking of going back to Africa to run my parents' business. So when I did decide to do Rep Culture, I was just jumping into it just because I love, putting like pieces together. I love like, just the idea of like how fashion can actually showcase who you are as an individual. So for me, it's about community more than it is fashion, but fashion just seemed to bring my ideas together.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed in the creative community, or I think it's probably the same all over the world, because I wasn't originally myself into fashion, but as someone that's a photographer or more into the art scene, I noticed that fashion is kind of the most popular thing that everybody is into that has to do with the art scene and creativity.
Yes.
And when you learn about fashion or style, it's about kind of embracing where you're from. Like the more you get into it, it's kind of like, what can you wear that represents you and where you're from? And I can definitely see how, it's important if you're styling yourself or representing yourself to represent where you're from and your cultural heritage.
Culture. Yeah, definitely. And my brother's a perfect representation of that, because every time he's dressed, he's like, he's very statement. And I think, it says something about you, it says something about where you're from. It says something about, what you stand for as well. And like a lot of people, I guess that's why, tees with statements, really sell, because it's about, you're expressing your identity through fashion, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Because when you wear something that represents who you are, it's kind of easier to connect with like-minded people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I think ever since we did open the store, we found that people that are just into, just the styles that we're bringing out, and even just the idea of the brand, have gravitated towards us as well. So we found that there's been a community of people who resonate with the idea and say, yeah, I really do want to represent my culture through clothing. And they've come through and just, kind of like surrounded the brand, which I think what you're saying is very true. Yeah.
And what motivated you to kind of start this brand initially?
So it actually started from me going back to Africa. So I had gone back home for like I think I was there for like 6 months. And I had just decided that, you know what, I'm going to go and stay with my parents. I had one more semester of uni. So I had, you know, maybe like I could decide to do a gap semester, or I could do an internship and do it anywhere I wanted to do.
And this is in Zambia?
No, so I went to Tanzania actually.
Tanzania.
So my parents were staying in Tanzania, but were originally from Zambia. So my dad was working in Tanzania, so I went to Tanzania for 6 months. And whilst I was there, I realized how different I was. Like, you know, they were looking at me like, "Where are you from?" And even when we went back to Zambia, because we traveled there quite a bit, people could tell that, you know, you're not from here. Like, you're very different. And that felt very interesting, considering when you're in Australia, people are always asking you the same question.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So people are always like, "Oh my gosh, like, where are you from?" Like, and you'll be like, people, I think that's where like some people might be like, "I'm from Australia," but it's like, where are you really from, you know? So like, yeah, so a lot of, there's like that huge, like, just displacement in that way, where it's like, when you go back home, people can tell you're not really from there. And then when you come here, people can tell you're not really from here as well. So yeah, so when I went back home, I felt that for the first time. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a mix of both worlds. And I didn't realize that. So when I came here, I realized the same thing for my friends, where they kind of were trying to figure out where to kind of like fit in and where to meet in the middle. And it's something that I guess kids who are growing up in the diaspora, or kids who are growing up in not their like home country, find that they have to find their footing. Like, do you assimilate more, or do you just, you know, do you stay more your culture? So like, all of those issues of identity come into play. So when I came, I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I didn't realize that this was a whole thing. And like, I was talking to somebody about it, and they were like, dude, you know, like, this has been happening for a while. So I came up with kind of just the idea of just finding a way to help people celebrate culture and realize that they don't have to be one or the other, but that being both is really good. Like, it's a cool space to be. Like, you actually get to embrace both sides of culture and be a very unique being, but you can also celebrate that through clothing. So the whole idea of Rep Culture is that it's meant to be like cool, different. It's meant to be, hey, statement, here I am. I'm not, you know, fully African. I'm not fully Australian. I'm both. And I can do that through, you know, clothing designed in Australia, made in Africa. And the whole idea of the brand is that we actually support local suppliers and manufacturers in Africa, and then we design in Australia. So we combine the two through our clothing manufacturing process, but we also we combine the two through the brand message as well. So so that's
the whole identity of the brand
exactly as well. Yeah. So that's where we started. Like, sorry, it was a bit long, but yeah.
No, I'm enjoying your story. I think just the whole concept of like, where are you from? It doesn't really even make sense. I guess like, it doesn't mean where you're born or where you grew up, or like, it's hard to even pinpoint, I think, for anybody. Like, where are you from?
Where are you really from? Yeah.
So even when I talk to someone, I don't really ask, where are you from? I mean, like, what's your background, or like, did you grow up here, sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because like, where are you from? It's
hard to answer.
It's a difficult one for anybody to answer, I think.
Of course. And like, I guess, you know, even just with environment, we're shaped by the different environments that we're in. So if, you know, even if I was born in Zambia and have come to Australia, you know, Zambia shaped me to some extent. You know, Australia's shaped me to some extent. When I've traveled overseas to countries that I'm not from, they've shaped me to some extent. So it's it's such a broad, you know.
And I think especially in, you know, 2023, where like, you can have someone who, you know, is of Indian descent, and they grew up in London, so like from London, but then they come to Australia, and like somebody asks them, where are you from? It's just like
where, you know,
it, because globally, I think we're just so like as everywhere's like quite globalized now.
Of course.
So it's like just because you look a certain way doesn't mean you're like from that place.
Exactly. Yeah, that is very true.
And I think in Australia, that's like we're I think one of the most multicultural societies in the world. So yeah, the question of where you're from doesn't really make sense today.
No, it doesn't.
But yeah, that's really cool how your whole brand like is about like embracing, you know, both places of where your background is, and also the you mentioned that the clothes are made in where are they made in Africa?
So they're made in Nigeria. We started with Nigeria, Tanzania, and Zambia. So we still make in those countries at the moment.
Okay, and is it specific garments are made in specific countries?
No, so depends on what we're trying to do. So not like we can just like, for example, if we're planning a collection, we would just figure out where the best place to make that specific collection would be. But most of the time, like, it's just more about our manufacturing connections. So at the moment, we're primarily manufacturing in Nigeria, so everything's being done there. And then sometimes it just depends on availability of the manufacturer, because they might be bogged down with other, orders. So we might go and do it with somebody else. So it just depends. Yeah.
And how did you connect with those manufacturers?
Through internet, like just online, just trying to find, different people to work with. And then, definitely through trial and error as well. Until we find, okay, this is the best person that we want to work with as a brand, and they understand our mission, they understand what we're trying to do. But yeah, mainly online. Like, I remember when I was trying to start up, I literally just went and just searched Instagram, and I was just scouring through, looking at different, like this. When I started, it was tailors that I was using. So just independent tailors located in Lagos. So I worked with one lady, and, I just found her on Instagram, and she just really, stood out to me, because I was looking for certain, things in terms of the way that the clothing looks on a person. And you can tell the, like the craftsmanship and like the understanding of, garments, when you can see the work that they've done online.
Like attention to detail.
Yeah, attention to detail, even just like how's it fitting on that person, because sometimes you can tell the difference with somebody else, or it's like, this isn't really how I'd want my clothing to look. So I was looking for certain things.
Yeah.
And yeah, like when I found her, she really got what I was trying to do. And I made my first order. But then after that, because the brand's growing, we've kind of gone more into partnering with a manufacturer, because we can afford it. But at the beginning, we couldn't do the big bulk, quantities. But now we can. Yeah.
And when you initially started the brand, as you had more of a marketing background, how did you create some of your first pieces?
So when I started, I literally just, I used Pinterest as like a mood board, and I had an idea of like the styles that I wanted to bring out. I wanted it to be trendy, but I wanted it to be very fresh and young as well. So I kind of like put down my ideas on the mood board, and then worked with the tailor to kind of curate my initial collection. So I was kind of just, winging it. And I feel like...
So you had like a Perth tailor?
No. So the same tailor that I had located on Instagram.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So she was,
okay. So you worked with her for quite a while.
Yeah, I worked with her for quite a while. So she was like, okay, well, like, what are you thinking? And I was kind of trying to give her the ideas that I had in my mind, based on what I think would look cute, what I think was like, what my, generation wanted in terms of, clothing. So yeah, so we kind of like curated our first collection, and we just winged it, and that was it. But I cannot fail to mention that my mom was actually, she's the one that was doing, African clothing way before I even thought about Rep Kulture. So she had connections as well, and I was always influencing some of her, designs to some extent. So it was easy to kind of, go from there, because, you have opportunities to talk to people and see what they like. So yeah, so I kind of was understanding it from there.
Okay, so you were quite inspired by your mom to go the fashion route and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so like when she was doing it, she was just doing it as a hobby. It was just like a side business. But then for me, the reason why I got into it was because I'm very community focused and very like I'm very passionate about community. So when I did it, it was because I wanted to be more like I wanted to help, you know, my fellow, you know, youth, you know, to be able to just have something to celebrate, right?
Yeah.
So then, you know, when I did fashion, it was because it had a bigger mission attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So because I had that mission, I was able to kind of be like, oh, okay, and then I was
Connect the
thinking,
dots.
yeah, and connect the dots, and because I would help my mum as well, I kind of was like, oh, people seem to always ask for A, B, C, D, so it was easier to kind of be like, okay, well, let's try and see what we can make based on the feedback that we've been getting. So yeah, so it was
Cool.
pretty good.
And how have you connected with all sort of demographics? Like if you have, I'm not sure if you have a certain demographic or an age range, but you're saying like younger people, but I've also seen kind of old generation also wear your stuff.
Yeah, of course.
So have you created garments that do kind of, have you created garments for both demographics, or do you create different pieces for different
demographics?
Yeah, and styles? And
that's a really good question, actually. So the moment we opened Rep Kulture in the city, we found, like, you know, a lot of people would come in and tell us what they're looking for. So, you know, it's great because we can just get market research, lots of data. We can use that to kind of like expand the brand. So whereas when I started, it was about, you know, young people embrace your roots. I realized that a lot of people in like, particularly in my community or just in the broader African community, were like, yo, we actually want to be able to wear this with our kids. We want to be able to rep the culture with, you know, our families. Like, we want couple shoots. Like, we want all
go out as a family just fully dripped in Rep Kulture.
Fully dripped in Rep Kulture. They want to drip themselves out in Rep Kulture. They said, we have given you the mission of dripping us out in Rep Kulture. So my agenda now is I'm realizing that it's not just focused on just one age group. You know, families want to be able to celebrate their culture, and, you know, they vibe with the brand. So what we're trying to do is we design for different, like, you know, target groups. So we design for kids. We've got like dads and just family stuff, but we still try to make it cool and young.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still like, you know, like you can find something that, you know, I can match my shirt with my wife's dress, and, you know, or I can match my child with this, and like, it's just, we're kind of like diversifying our target. And that's mainly because people have asked us to as well. So yeah, so we definitely have a lot of diverse range.
Okay. And how have you kind of connected with the community through your brand? Like, maybe it's through collaborations or events or that sort of thing.
It's been, I think from the beginning, it was mainly through dance. So when we opened, my brother had this amazing idea where he was like, look, let's just get some dancers in here, because he would dance in the store all the time. So he's like, let's just do some collabs with some dancers. So when he danced, like, we'll do one video with him dancing in the store, and then we'll have somebody else come in and dance with him as well. And I think that that just connected a lot, because it's just fun. Like, sometimes people follow us just not because they want to buy something, just because they love the videos of like the fun and the dance and the different things like that. So we posted that quite a bit, and, you know, people just really resonate, particularly with the music side of it, with the dance side of it. So yeah, so I think we've managed to connect that way. And then also we've been trying to do lots of events. So we did, our first one was called Moyana Rojo, which is a fashion show. And it sold out, which was, you know, we were shocked.
That was like, your own Rep Kulture event?
Rep Kulture fashion show, Rep Kulture event. And that went really well. And then now we're doing something called a Rep Kulture Summer, which is like just meant to be like a fun, vibey event where people can just come together and just be able to connect and just chill and have some live music. So yeah, so we've been able to kind of like reach out and have, you know, some community connection with those kind of events as well.
And I guess marketing wise, have you sort of collaborated with maybe local artists or maybe local influencers to promote your stuff as well?
The stuff, yeah. So we have done a few collabs. We've done a few collabs with some dancers quite a bit, and then also lots of creatives and models as well. We actually have something on this week with a group of creatives, and they're coming to take over the store.
Oh, cool.
And they're just bringing a DJ in. They're going to be wearing Rep Kulture. And then that's
nice. And
gonna be a vibe. Yeah.
Fashion shows as well. Have you been involved in
a lot of fashion shows? Yes, we've been trying to get more involved with a lot of fashion shows as well. Doesn't seem to be a lot happening in Perth in terms of fashion shows actually, but we've been reached out to by people like Kaleidoscope, and they do like some really fun fashion shows. So we try and take part with those, and obviously we try and do some ourselves as well so that we can connect with our audience. We're definitely trying to reach out with fashion shows. Lots of trying to collab with influencers online as well. Trying to just kind of push that area.
And have you found the response from the Perth community in terms of like your brand maybe since you started?
I think it's been really good so far. So particularly, I told you that when we opened, it was in after lockdown.
Yeah, 2020.
COVID. Yeah, 2020. So that was really
that must have been stressful.
It wasn't. That's the
really?
funny thing. It really wasn't. Like when we opened, I would say I was shot through the roof. Like it was crazy. Like like we were just going let's just do this. We're gonna just make it happen. Probably wasn't the best timing, but still like.
Oh, you like knew the lockdown was happening, but I was just gonna do it anyway.
I know, like we were getting so much traction, and I was just you know what, we're gonna just do it. We're gonna just take a leap of faith. We're gonna jump into it and make it happen. So we literally set up during COVID, had the store ready, and we launched it, and so many people came and supported us, and like it was just such a surprise because we just were like, oh my gosh, like what is this? Yeah. So many people came, and like I don't know, like it's been so crazy.
Is it even a boost in your brand, would you say? Like,
yeah, definitely. I think it solidifies the brand as well. Like a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, Rep Kulture, what? Like, this is a proper brand. Like, I don't know if brick and mortar is.
Yeah, it does like solidify your brand, and like it's like real. It's like real life. It's not just on like a digital platform.
Online, yeah. And also like people, want to come and try stuff on in the store. They've
probably been following the journey as well, maybe, and they were like, wow, it's like now a real store, and like they want to come in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think the response was, like it was surprising, but it was really cool. Like we obviously underestimated ourselves. And I think for me, it was just a kind of like a feeling or like a hunch to be like, okay, hey, you should try and do brick and mortar, because a lot of people when I started out would try and come to my house to try clothes on. So they'll be like, hey, saw that you posted this, can I come and try it on? And so everybody was coming to my house, and that was obviously not a good idea. And we then moved into like this little hidden spot in Burgoon, and that was it was very hard to find. And we would only get people in when like maybe once or twice a week or something like that. Then after that, like when we did launch our brick and mortar, so many people were coming through. So yeah, so it's definitely been a really, really good response.
And how did you go about launching that store? Because I think a lot of designers or creative people who maybe want to launch their own store in the city are quite nervous about it. So how did you start, or what advice can you give them? Yeah,
I think that they need to obviously need to do their research and need to do their market research as well. Like for us, location matters. And you want to find where your target market is as well. I really liked the idea of the city because it's central. It's a good area. It's and it's easy for people our target market to access as well, like accessibility wise. So I think if somebody's trying to find or to open a brick and mortar store, location definitely matters. And I think location comes with vibe, like. Some locations have or share a different vibe. So I think you're trying to check out what vibe suits your brand and what are you trying to present to your audience, And then I think particularly for the city, there's, for me, I really accessed a lot of government help as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like for me, I just thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to take the risk. It was very low risk for me. So it wasn't like if it didn't work, I could have an easy exit strategy. So a lot of people might find that they're locked into a contract that they can't exit. Whereas for me, I could exit easily. Like, if it wasn't working out, I'd be like, listen, I tried my best.
Yeah.
It's not working. I just need to let it go. But that wasn't the case, obviously, because it did work. So you want to find something that has low risk, so you can test it out. You can see whether it's working out, and then you can go ahead. But yeah, that's what I would say. That you can always reach out. The government does help a lot. You can always reach out to places like the Small Business Development Corporation. They can help out with a lot of people who are just trying to start up, and they have lots of contacts and connections. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And did you get a specific grant or anything like that because of COVID, or?
No, I didn't. So I literally put all my money into the business. So when I was starting, I actually quit my job as well. So I was like out cold turkey. Wow. So yeah, so I put all my money into it. But like there was a thing in the city which is called Activate Perth. There's a lot of people leaving the city. So like, they were like, hey, do you want to come and test out your brand in the city? And I was like, no worries, I will come and bring forth my brand. So that's how I eventually opened in Plaza Arcade. But now we've moved to the NX building. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I've also noticed like a jump in maybe creatives launching things and starting their own brands in the past like couple of years, even in like the creative scene, maybe Gen Z or Gen Y kind of generation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good, because I think something that Perth's lacking, because there's that phrase like people say like, oh, Perth is boring, and I think one reason I see why that might be is because of maybe lack of embrace of like creativity and diversity and like community in the city.
Yeah, of course.
And I think there's a lack of maybe focus on how like the arts can change that. And by arts, I mean like fashion community, dance community, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, of course.
And going sort of deeper into that, I've talked about on the podcast before, I think we've, as a city, I think we're very well off. I mean, we get majority of our sort of income from like sort of the mining industries, more like industrial industries.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I feel like we focus a lot on that, like where the money is coming from. And I think that's good because, getting a good income for the city is good. But then if you leave out the arts community, that sort of thing,
it gets affected, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have seen like a bit of a change in the past like a couple of years, even with Sneakerland, or there was the basketball competition in Forest Chase, like by I forget what it's called, but I think it's also by the One Off Store guys. Things like that. Also, there's been pop-ups, like local designer pop-ups in the city. There's a Perth brand called Riot Hill. Also, there's a Tyler, who's a young like fashion designer, photographer.
Wow.
He runs Jargon, which is it's like a pop-up that was hosted at Cabinet Noir.
Nice.
And like he had different like young designers showcase their clothing, creating like an event around that, like things like that. Just show me that there is going to be like an abrasive change in the city.
Yeah, and I think the government's like looking to get that, like for brands like us, like like have been in the city is obviously it adds a different vibe to the city as well. And I think even when you see things like Sneakerland, like there's a push to kind of revitalize the CBD and trying to bring back that kind of flair to the city. And I think if creatives really wanted to, they could take advantage of that opportunity and like, you know, just showcase themselves, because a lot of people think the city is not, you know, like it's too hard to get to in some way because of the, you know, when you drive in, the parking is horrendous, and you know, all of these things. But they're really trying to make it a lot better, and they're like offering lots of incentives. And you know, I've noticed that even around the city, there's like, you know, different like cool brands that are popping up, and like different things happening. And you know, I think after some time, like as they're doing, you know, as like you know, they're doing lots of renovations as well at the moment, but I think after some time, hopefully it does just pick up as more creatives come in, because I think what will make the city even cooler is a creativity scene. Like I think we need more creativity in the city, and right now it's not as much. So we need and
I think also on a larger kind of scale of us finding our identity as Australians. Yeah. I think when we embrace multiculturalism, that's sort of embrace that as identity. I think like a lot of positive change can come out from that.
It. Yeah.
Like I was going to say, if you look at Melbourne, for example, I haven't been to Melbourne, but I've just seen the sort of creative art scene over there. Looks like a embrace of multiculturalism.
Of course.
Or I've heard really good things about London as a city embracing multiculturalism.
Of course, yeah.
I think like we can sort of follow that sort of
route. Particularly around Perth, hey. Because I've seen that with Perth, it's the food. Like there's like an embrace of multiculturalism around food, but maybe in terms of like fashion and art, it's not as much as somewhere like Melbourne, you know, which is pretty sad because there's so many creatives here.
Yeah, I think food's where it starts. People like, once they try it, they're like, that tastes really good. So then,
yeah, of course, you know. But even when you go to the city, like I'm pretty sure I can count how many like Asian stores there are. There's so many, like, you know, and people like love Asian food. Yeah, but
not a lot of maybe African restaurants or things like that, or Middle Eastern. I guess there's like there's a few Middle Eastern places.
There's a few. Like they have like is it Goslam? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And like there's a few like that. But I think...
I can't think of any African restaurants in the city. Do you know?
Yeah. Well, there's two now. So there's one like towards Pier Street, and there's another one that's opened in like it's off like near the Point. But it's not... it's a very niche one. Like African food is not... I don't think it's easily marketable as much as Asian food. Like Australia is so close to Asia, like you know. So
that was the theory that why do we embrace a lot of Asian culture but not African culture?
Not African culture.
I guess one of the theories was we're in close proximity to Asia. Like a lot of people go to Bali.
Of course. A lot of people travel to places like, you know, Japan and you know, like Korea. Like it's easily accessible, and we also have a lot of like Asian migrants here as well, so there's a huge market for that to, you know, to work. But with Africans, we're very fresh in Australia. Like it's not that long that Africans have been here. So it's only now that like little things are popping up here and there, like, you know, like, oh, there's an African restaurant that's opened, oh, there's an African shop that's open, you know. But I think the food aspect of African culture is probably going to take a bit more time for Australians to embrace. It's going to be like, you know, and it's very different. Like,
why do you think that is? I feel like maybe Australians would just taste the food and be like, damn, we need some more of this.
Really? Well, like, okay, so maybe there's like some stuff that's like, what, jollof rice, or like, you know, what, like, depends, because also the food that we have, traditionally speaking, like, for example, in Nigeria, they have like pounded yam, which is like a starch, and it's like a solid, and you use your hands to eat it.
There's a lot of meat dishes though. Like
there's a lot of meat dishes, but it's also quite spicy as well. So like lots of stews. And
well, if you think about the Asian restaurants here, like a lot of it is like quite westernized as well. Like they make it fit for
like Western like butter chicken, right?
Yeah.
Like like I don't think it's gonna work. But like it might work in terms of.
I think there's always a way to market. You know, as someone who has a marketing background, like of course, if you have like a food that's so different and you introduce it here, like people like what's familiar. They like to eat what's familiar. So
of course,
there's a way to kind of
to market it. Actually, now you've reminded me. Well, like Nando's has an Afro-Portuguese background. And then also, you know, like in the city, Hunter and Barrow and Meat and Wine are all South African restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so those,
True.
but then it's more like steak and, you know, that kind of vibe. I mean,
True.
and we love
I think
our
maybe
barbecue.
once we get like used to that, and then I think it's a slow process. Like we can't expect like a lot of African, like traditional African restaurants to come in right away, but I think it is going to happen.
Yeah, it is. And it is happening. Like for some people, they're like, I really want to try African food. And, you know, they're trying it out and they love it. I know one of my friends just loves, like there's this thing we call sadza. She loves it. Like she'll just be like, oh my gosh, you're making sadza. I'm coming to your house today. And she's Italian. So she's grown up here. She's like, you know, so yeah, like, so I think it just depends. Like, I think also it comes down to the proximity that you are, you know, around like, you know, people of culture, like, you know, people of different backgrounds. Yeah. Because I'm sure that, you know, if you have like, you know, an Asian friend, you find yourself at some point, you know, tasting food from their culture, right?
Yeah.
And then like if you have an African friend, you then be like, oh my gosh, hey, what are you eating? Like, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's all about like that connection. And, you know, maybe there needs to be more events around, you know, people from different backgrounds or just the community coming together and connecting.
I have seen like there's a lot of African events. Actually, what's interesting is the rise of Afrobeats events in Perth.
Of course. Oh, let's not even.
Because I feel like the Afrobeats events is what's gaining like a lot of popularity, like even becoming like a mainstream thing.
Of course, yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, no, it's very full on because there's like an event every weekend now. So
yeah, they do really well. Yeah,
they
and
do.
The Afrobeats DJs and that sort of thing.
Of course, yeah, it's the time for Afrobeats, right? Like,
because if you think about it, if you go, just my personal perspective, you go to any other like nightclub, it's just more about sort of like drinking and then there's music, but it's kind of like the same sort of music. But if you go to like an Afrobeats event, like everybody's dancing and it's just like a huge vibe compared to those events. And
of course,
I think that's only going to grow.
It will. Like, I mean, like African music and Afro culture is a huge trend at them. It's almost like
even like the mainstream artists like Wizkid,
Ed Sheeran, like. What, like, who else? Selena Gomez did like a collab with an Afrobeats, you know, person as well. So it is very like, this is the new thing.
See, that's what I mean about marketing. Like, Wizkid, he's like, you know, African descent, but it's not like he's performing traditionally African music. He's he has sort of music that everybody
can actually
listen to, and it has like it can, you know, work with the mainstream audience.
Yeah, that's true. But also,
he's still like representing where he's from at the same time. Yeah,
right. Because you don't really understand the whole song. Like you understand like the main chorus, and you can sing to it. But everything else, you're like, I don't know what he's saying. Like, or you pick up like things like, oh, they don't kill my vibe, and then he continues in like, well,
Actually, it's super interesting. Yeah. Even if you look at K-pop music. Like a lot of those songs, it's like 80% in Korean maybe, and then they just have the little verse that's in English.
Of course, yeah.
But even K-pop, I think globally K-pop is on the rise. Like you're seeing a lot more international songs and music just in the mainstream audience. And what's interesting in the city, you see, I'm not sure if you've seen like the K-pop dancers in the city.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, like there's these K-pop dance groups or clubs, and then sometimes they do like live performances in the city.
In the city, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of them.
Okay, so then that's similar to, I guess, what's happening, like that side, and like even just happening in terms of African culture, because that's also happening. Because I've seen like a lot of African like dancers, like
Mabanga Studios,
Mabanga culture, like coming to the city and like doing like pop-up dance. Yeah. And like people would just kind of stop and have a look at what he's doing, right?
It like brings life to the city, you know.
It does.
Like if you're walking around, you got not much to do.
Yeah.
and like maybe hang out with your friends. It's like such a cool thing to watch.
Yeah, of course. And that energy and the music, right? And yeah, I think it's an exportation of like Africanism and African culture, which obviously that energy and the vibe and
Yeah,
just the
bringing
dance,
that here to Australia.
bringing
That's really
that
cool.
here to Australia, but it brings people together, which is amazing, right? Like it's why not?
Yeah, that's why like the arts and creative scene is so important, because like dance, it's something that like every culture has its own like interpretation of dance.
Yeah,
And
of course.
same with style, same with fashion.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's its own form of communication.
Yeah.
And like I think it's amazing when people, it's almost like when people try food from a different culture. It's like when they try that different dance, or it's like this different style.
Yeah.
It's like they're embracing that culture.
That aspect of it, yeah. And do you think it's a thing of like, I guess, like people just enjoying like the globalization of culture in a way, or just, an aspect of it is people discovering themselves through music and dance and, all of that stuff. Like,
I think it's like one, there's like an energy to it. So if you see like a dance, you're like, well, that's cool. So you're just like, you're attracted to it because
it's a
of
vibe.
the energy. Same with fashion. You might be just attracted to it. Oh, I think that looks really good.
Yeah.
And then maybe it might incentivize you to try it out, like try this dance or try this piece of clothing, try this food. And it's about, I think at the end of the day, it's kind of about, it is about discovering yourself, because to discover yourself, you want to try new things and you're trying to like gain perspective, because it helps you kind of, I don't know, make decisions, or when you know yourself, it's easy to make decisions.
Around,
So it's kind of all about discovering yourself. And I think just like travel for a person can help them discover themselves, because they're learning new perspectives. Maybe they go to a certain country and they think differently. They have a different religion. They learn from that religion. They take that and learn from that within themselves.
Of course.
It's like a similar, at a smaller scale, when you try different food or try dance. You're like
different dances, right?
You're like learning from a different culture, learning a different perspective.
Yeah, no, that's very true. But yeah, like I think one thing that I've learned through Rep Culture is how transient culture is. Like, most of the time when we meet people at the shop, it's people that are from, Brazil, or they've come from the UK, and they've come from, or they might have come from Fiji, but everybody kind of just connects through that music and dance and just the vibe of the brand. So it's very transient, because you're sharing, like people can pick up things that they see maybe in the fabrics that's similar in their culture. Or they'll be like, hey, actually we have this, you guys have that, wow, that's amazing. I really love this. Or we've had some brides come in and they've just been like, oh my gosh, this fabric has a meaning to me because A, B, C, D. Like, and it's not even from their own country, but it's made, somewhere else, but it still connects across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, as I was saying, creativity can be a language.
Yeah,
so like you can notice a certain pattern and it can be similar to something that you recognize and you resonate with it.
Yeah.
And really that's kind of what embracing culture is about. Like you're saying, like, okay, what is similar? Like I like dance.
Yeah.
If you like dance, maybe you can like dance from a different culture, or you're a fan of food, you're gonna like be a fan of food from a different culture. Or
and
fashion.
The fact is, you're celebrating that culture when you have that food, or when you take part in that dance, right? Like, or even just when you look at fabric, like we have Ankara fabric, and somebody might look at like what I'm wearing today and they might be like, oh my gosh, this is what I see in what you're wearing. And somebody else would look at it and might not see anything. And like, that's that thing where it's like the artist that made this is, trying to say something with the fabric, and somebody will fall completely in love with the idea of, oh my gosh, like this is what I've been looking for. Like, the colors, everything. They're my colors, or
Yeah.
or it might be with food as well, where you're like, oh my gosh, like for me, I love Vietnamese food. So every time I have Vietnamese food, I'm thinking about when I'm gonna go to Vietnam and just gain weight for free, because I'm like, this food is amazing. Like, I don't even know how you guys like, put this sauce and this flavor together and made this a absolutely beautiful creation. Like, how did you do that? So it's definitely a celebration, and I love the globalization aspect, because you can just celebrate different cultures in such different ways, and it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of the like design process of the garments, do you have a in-house designer, or do you work on the designs yourself, and what are the kind of influences behind the designs? If you can talk about that.
Shout out to Ira, because she is our
what's her IG
at King of the Disco. She needs to change that, but it's called King of the Disco. But she's amazing. So she does most of our in-house designs, so everything from like tech packs all the way from concept and everything like that. And I can't take credit for any of her work, because she's really brilliant. All I come in to do is essentially just to kind of like, bring about the best design based on what our clients are saying as well. I'm front facing, so I'm always talking to people and hearing what they're saying. So I might recommend, oh, hey, actually this aspect of this dress needs to be changed a little bit, because our clients have actually been looking for A, B, C, D. So we're trying to like make stuff for people that they want.
Oh yeah, so you're like listening to the feedback.
Yeah, I'm listening to the feedback of clients. And saying, okay, a lot of people might not like showing their shoulders, or if we're making this dress, let's consider, the functionality of it, or let's consider how often can I wear this? How much wear can I get from this? How can I style this? Where will I go with this? Because something might look good on paper and, it looks amazing, but we need to think about who are we trying to sell it to, and what are we trying to do with this outfit? So most of the time, my role is just to kind of like, I guess reduce the amount of, maybe designs that we have to ones that are going to speak to our audience, and ones that are what people are asking for. And then even just in the design itself, to think about little things that they might not be thinking about that I know matter. Like, oh, hey, like there's a little bit of stretch in this skirt that we've added. So we've added a bit of elastic at the back so that it sits better. Or we've added this zip on the slit so that you can make it as high or as low as you want. So like little things like that, which, that means that somebody can then have more functionality out of that outfit. We've been making like reversible jackets, and you can get so much wear out of a reversible jacket. So we want to give value to what we're doing. So back to Ira. So she does the designs, and I kind of just bring that all together. And
the designs of like the pattern making and
the pattern making. So like she'll do like, the tech pack, like
the graphics,
all of that. So like, the graphics, the tech pack, and we'll send it through to our manufacturer in Nigeria, and then we'll go through then the manufacturing process, and do all of like the sampling and everything like that, and then go through to then production after we're happy with the samples. And lately I've been finding that sometimes like when we start doing the sampling process, what we maybe had on paper doesn't really come out the way that we might have thought that it would. So we then have a lot of like, taking away during the sampling process, because you're like, oh, this wasn't what I thought it would look like. Or we might then refine the idea and make it even better and be like, oh, hey, yeah, this is okay, but we can make it better like this. So that's my role.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to really find sort of what your customers want and to make changes, is it through just talking to people like in the store, maybe they mention something, or?
Yeah, definitely in store. So I love just the in-store aspect of our brand, because we get to connect with people. So a lot of the time when something's really good, they will let us know, hey, this is perfect. This is amazing. I love this, 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 this. and I would definitely be coming back. Or when they don't like something, they'll be like, I really like this dress, but I feel like it's missing this or missing that. And if it's been communicated multiple times and I'm taking that on board, or some clients would just come in and be like, hey, I just, want to see more of this in the store. Can you buy more of this? Because I think I want to own Rep Culture and I want to like wear Rep Culture, but I can't, I need a bit more of this. So so it's really fun because we're very customer centric and we're very community focused. So most of the time we're trying to get input from people. We're trying to like design our collections and around understanding what's selling really well, like what's doing very well and why is it doing well. So then when we design stuff moving forward in the future, we're looking at those aspects. Like we know what people are going to complain about. We know what people are going to ask for. So the past 4 years of this brand, we've been doing a lot of market research, in my opinion. So just a lot of understanding our client, understanding what they're looking for, understanding what styles they would want, and then trying to kind of like bring the brand together and curate something that is for them, and because it is for them, So that's what we're trying to do.
Is there any, just based on talking to people, is there anything that has surprised you over the years of having this brand that people maybe want? Like maybe, I'm not sure if you guys do business stuff or just any sort of anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just trying to think about like whether somebody's asked for something.
Do you have like business, like suits and do suits and ties?
We do some suits and ties, but we made them for men. So when we did make them for men, women were coming to the shop and being like, hey, we want that.
Yeah. Oh, cool, cool.
So then that's like, so that maybe that's something that, people would be like, even when with the, like some styles that we've made, like maybe we've had like certain pants. We would have like, women coming in being like, why are these only for men? We want them for us as well. For the guys, it's quite interesting because we've kind of like, we focus a lot more on women, but like we've been curating guys' collections. And with guys, it's very interesting because it's like either they like it or they don't. So you're always testing out what they like. And like it's either a hit or miss. But now we're kind of trying to understand more of like, what type of guy is coming to the shop. And, at the moment, I'm realizing that it's very like, just guys that want a good statement piece. And, so a guy that just wants, hey, he just want to walk down the street and
see him. Yeah, I think, just from seeing the graphics of your brand, like it's very bright colors, like patterns. Yeah. So it'd be hard to like miss somebody if you're
walking down the street. Yeah.
Rep Culture.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing with some people where it's like they might not want to be as loud, and the type of person that's wearing Rep Culture
are very like loud.
Yeah. Like it has to be a statement. Like you're doing it because you love the statement piece. It's different. No, but not everybody has it.
Yeah. And that's the thing about fashion, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. But so like it's definitely very niche. Like Perth definitely loves the blacks and the like just very neutral colors.
Oh yeah. Like you mean the people walking around in the business suits and that sort of thing. It's very we're definitely not as expressive as
maybe Melbourne
or Melbourne, like the biggest cities.
Yeah, definitely. And I found that like when people from Melbourne come to the city, they just vibrate. Like they love the store. Like they just they love the vibrance, and like they just enter the store and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this. So like a lot of people from Melbourne, when they're coming in, they're like they're sold immediately. So
I think that it's hard to find that kind of sense of expression with a lot of individuals in Perth, like that confidence to wear something different, wear something loud and be different. I don't think it's as common in Perth as maybe the other bigger cities.
As the other bigger cities, like with Perth, you definitely have to find the trendsetters to do it. Like when somebody sets the trend, then everybody's like, oh, like, I'll wear that. Like, so we definitely just work with like people who are like, like they love just
statement pieces.
Yeah, statement pieces. So
being noticed in the room.
Exactly. Like and I think for Rep Culture it's about being different. and being okay with being different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes boldness, because you're like, yeah, this is me, and look at me, I look great, and that's it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And kind of looking forwards with your brand, what's on the horizon for you? What kind of, where do you see yourself going or expanding?
Yeah. Well, at the moment, my target for this year is I'm really trying to focus more on the online side of things. I really want to expand online. Like, I've seen pockets of interest in different cities in Australia, but also different countries as well. So I'm trying to do more kind of like, trying to expand more on the online side of things. So that's been my target. So in the horizon for me would definitely be a lot more like events. I really just find that, the events aspect is just so rewarding in such a huge way, and it just brings our community together.
Yeah.
And then also just more like just focus on like the online side of things. So yeah, just more online marketing, SEO, all in between, So yeah, so definitely be doing more of that.
Do you think you sell more through online or in your brick and mortar store?
Definitely brick and mortar, because people want to come and talk to us. So a lot of people are walking through the doors, and just wanting to, have a chat about, like they, when they try it on, like you can feel and sense the energy around it. So I think, a lot of people come through the store.
Okay.
And lots of walk-ins as well. But yeah, I don't think I've optimized the online side as much. So I'm thinking that I'm gonna really push my push on that side a lot more this year.
And with the management of the online sales, do you keep all your stock like in store? Or do you have like a warehouse or?
No, so we just keep all the stock in store. We do have like lots of space at the NX building. They've given us like a storage downstairs. So we have more than enough space at the moment. If it does grow beyond that, then we'll definitely be looking at maybe warehousing as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yande, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was amazing to talk to you and hear about your brand and everything you're doing. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was an amazing experience. And yeah.
And where can people find you and your brand online and like check it out and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So they can find us on Rep Kulture. So it's REP and culture with a K. So they can check us out on Instagram. Website wise, it's repkulture.com.au. And on Facebook, it's Rep Kulture as well. So yeah, so feel free to like us, follow us, subscribe, all the in between.
Thank you so much for listening, guys, and catch you again soon.